What is happening, everybody? It's been a hot minute. Yes, it has been a few weeks. And yes, I did say on the social medias and all the stuff out there that Brant was going to be on the show today, but he had to bow out at the last moment. So tonight, you're going to get just me and Kat. And this was a insane comic book week. There was a lot of books. And tomorrow is going to be another huge week, but it's just really highly anticipated comics that are getting ready to come out. So we got a good show for you. Before we get into those comic books that happened this past week, we're going to talk about some news.
Yes. I will say I did my list for April, and because it's 5 weeks in the month, there's not like whatever's happening tomorrow for me. I'm like, oh yeah, like I'll have like 14 books. That's fine. But when you get to, for me, when you get to that 20 marker, I have like 22, 23 books. I know you add 30 books. That's a lot. It's just,
I read all 30 of them.
And that's crazy. And I read all my books in one day. And today, because we get some like review copies, I was going to read some of like the early, like some of the indie books, but I didn't have time. So now I really have to read all 22 books tomorrow. Yeah. So that's going to be fun.
That's what I try to do. Like on Wednesdays, like I get the indie books, review copies and stuff like that. And so I try to read those ahead of time, even though I hate reading digitally. Same. But it's the only way to kind of stay ahead of things. And then I'll buy the physical copies later. But it's just, if I can read 4 or 5 books, that actually gives me like a good head start on stuff. But last week, I just felt like I could not get ahead. I was like, oh yeah, man, I read 10 books. I read 11 books. Oh shit, I still got another 17 books to read. I'm like, there's just so much. And I was away. I was on vacation last week too. And I was still managed to find myself reading and reading and reading and reading. And I even stated in a video, I was like, I got to drop books because I can't sustain reading 30 books every week and making videos. It's literally impossible, you know?
No, it's crazy. You gotta make cuts, which I'm sure we'll be talking about. Mike did a solo show 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I always applaud you when you're able to do those. That week I was in Seattle for Emerald City Comic Con, so I had told you previously before that. So
we're able to do that. I'll do it. I'll do my own show, and it went great because we had. I wasn't the only one there. It was all these guys out here asking the questions. If it wasn't for them on the show, I would be just sitting there kind of twiddling my thumbs, So
I'll say I think it's for me. It's gonna be a while until I'm not free on a Tuesday, so you'll be seeing my mug for a while. So that'll be nice. Cool. Let's get into the news though. Let's start with the only media news, which is Sadie Sink is going to be joining Tom Holland in the next Spider-Man movie. Who's she going to play? A lot of people were thinking like Mary Jane. I saw like rumors maybe she'll play like the kid of a future Spider-Man. I mean, she's a great actress if you watch Stranger Things. So I am curious because your go-to is Mary Jane. Obviously, Mary Jane exists in this universe with Zendaya, but it's like, oh man, it's an Elseworld Mary Jane. So I am curious. I'm game for that. She's a cool actress.
Yeah, when I heard she was in there, I was kind of like, what are they going to do with her? I am very curious also. But, like nobody remembers that he's Spider-Man. So it's kind of like, I don't know, like maybe she might play an Elseworld Mary Jane. She's a redhead and it's like, it makes sense. But in the movies, I can't not see Zendaya play MJ. You know what I'm saying? And it'll be interesting to see what she does play. I couldn't even begin to tell you.
No, I agree. Supposedly there's cancellation of Mighty Marvel Masterworks. I have them all. Oh, that sucks. I feel like because comic journalism has been so different than it used to be. Like, you used to be able to find out like what books are getting canceled and what new books are coming out, which is so crazy. And we'll talk about it later. I've been busy with like work and stuff, so I hadn't caught up with the solicits right away. Right, so the Marvel solicits came out, and it was like 4 days or whatever, and I found out there was a new Runaways book, and I only found that out because I read the solicits. I didn't see a news piece. I was like, what? And it's crazy. Like there's another book that got canceled, I don't know, recently, and I don't remember what it was. I'm like, this book got canceled. That's so weird. Like it felt like halfway through the story. And it goes back to like, 5 years ago, you'd find out that book was canceled, right away, and you would like be prepared for it. And if there's a new series, like a new Runaways, you'd find out about it. So it's so wild that, news outlets have been so different now.
I didn't even know a new Runaway book was coming out. You just mentioned it.
Until now.
So like, I don't even look at solicits really anymore unless, it's brought to my attention.
I usually don't either, but I wanted to see what was happening in Exceptional X-Men, and that's
right.
what I found out.
Because I just feel like the solicits tend to spoil things that is coming out a lot of the times, like, who knows, in a month from now or whatever it is. So I kind of, if I see it, I see it, but I won't read what it's about. Right. So that's kind of my deal there.
No, I really don't like to look at solicits usually either. I literally was just thinking about Exceptional X-Men. I was like, I was curious what they were doing for something. And I saw multiple series. I saw Runaways was not announced, and Emma Frost having a mini series I didn't know about. And I was like, oh wow, there's so many I wouldn't have saw unless I looked at these solicits. So maybe I should be looking at the solicits more. And I'll say Marvel in particular does that. DC, I think, does a little bit better announcing their books. But I will say it was even hard to find the Batman and Robin book that was announced, which we're going to talk about all those books coming up. But I try to hunt for the news for you guys is the answer for that. All right. Moving into some comic news. So we had the death of Silver Surfer, another death of a character coming out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not new. I mean, we've seen characters die 1,000 times, but I will definitely check it out. I like Silver Surfer. He doesn't always have many series, right? He used to have an ongoing series. I think the last time he had ongoing series, I think it was when Dan Slott wrote him, right? I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, there's been a bunch of mini series.
There's been a lot of minis, yeah.
Right. I mean, you had Silver Surfer Black and things like that, but just nothing like really ongoing. And I know this is another mini series, but anytime he's in a book, I will definitely check it out. And curious to see how he dies. I'm not sure he'll come back, but we'll see what happens.
Tavia mentions that NYX and Spider-Boy are also ending. Spider-Boy I did not hear about. I'm actually kind of surprised by that because they're releasing a Spider-Girl series now.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. I didn't know that was true. It would kind of suck because it's actually a decent book, NYX I definitely knew about because a couple of, I think X-Force is ending on issue 10 also.
Yeah, I think those were the ones that just probably didn't sell as well, which I think makes sense. NYX, it was like cult favorite characters, and even those cult favorite characters, like I like those characters when I couldn't get into that book, so I think that was a little bit of a harder sell. I do want to mention this comment, Dan's Hobby Corner. I'm newish to the show and new to the comic scene, looking for some good book recommendations for Marvel, and I'm huge into DC. Marvel right now, I mean, I just mentioned Exceptional X-Men. I personally really like it, but I don't think that's a new reader-friendly book. I think that's very much for people who already enjoy those characters. Marvel's a little tougher. Like, for DC, I could mention Green Lantern or Superman. I think those are really easy to jump into, but I would say like Ultimate Spider-Man. Start from the beginning for that. Like, that's an easy one because it's not much you have to like know from previous stories. But other than that, Marvel's a little harder for me to recommend right now.
It's kind of funny. I just did a video on books that I really enjoy. Well, that I am enjoying from Marvel right now. And I totally forgot what that list is. I have to go back and look at it and see. But yeah, there was like 10 books that I mentioned in the video that I thought that were decent.
X Factor is really easy to get into because it's like that's pretty new reader friendly.
Right. Deadpool,
Uncanny X-Men, maybe. Deadpool is a good one. Yep. I'm looking at my list now to see like what do I read. Again, Ultimate Spider-Man. Those are probably my biggest recommendations for. What's a fun one? Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. We were talking about that. If you like the show, that's a really good comic. I think it's a good like adaptation.
I'm gonna see if I can pull up this doc that I had, if it's still up there, or did I take it down? Let me
see if there's any recommendations.
Yeah, see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, we're seeing the cancellations. X Factor is canceled at issue 10. Someone mentioned Storm is good. I know Mike just jumped onto that. And you
really here it is. It's still here. I'll give you 10 right now, at least from my perspective anyway. So Storm is there as a sleeper pick for me. Kat doesn't like this book, but I like it. It's West Coast Avengers.
Yeah, I couldn't get into that one.
Ultimate Wolverine, you could like. That's a good jumping on point to see if you do like it. Miles Morales Spider-Man's pretty solid. Spider-Boy, we talked about it, is actually pretty decent. It's an all ages book. Venom is a good book to jump on right now because you're trying to figure out who Venom actually is. Probably Moon Knight would not be the best book for you to jump on because it's kind of, there's a volume previously, but it is really good. Deadpool, we definitely
That's a
mentioned.
really Deadpool's very easy to jump in.
And I
wasn't
recommended
reading it
to
for a
Kat,
while. Mm-hmm.
and she's liked it. Ultimates is really good in my eyes, but it's a year into it at this point.
It's also like, I think, very dense for new readers. I think if you're a comic reader, you've been reading comics for a long time, you understand like how comics work. I think if I was a new reader, I'd be like, this is too much for Ultimates.
And then Ultimate Spider-Man. And then there's a couple of new ones that just came out. So you got Red Hulk that just came out. Carnage just came out. They're all in the first issues. Jedi Knights just came out. And then Fantastic Four is getting ready to relaunch very soon too. So that might be something that you might want to jump on in the near future. So those are just some of the recommendations there.
But which book besides like Ultimate Spider-Man you're like, I love, like, I think you should pick this up because like every issue's like out of the park.
So
honestly,
I would say Ultimates because
they were, you really like Ultimates.
Ultimate Spider-Man was my number one and Ultimates was number two. But Ultimate Spider-Man is the book where I'm just like, I gotta freaking read this book right now. And then everything else is like, these are really good books, but I wouldn't say like I'm jumping out of my seat.
Yeah.
You know, Ultimates is pretty close. And Venom I like because it's fun and it's mysterious, but these are not like next level books. Like next level books for me is like Transformers, Geiger, Rook Exodus, all those independent books, you know,
Feral.
even G.I. Joe. There's going to be one book that I talk about. Like there's a lot of indie books that are just really next level and that hit that mark.
Yeah, I think indie. And again, I'll always state this, especially for people who are newer to the show. Both me and Mike are bigger Marvel fans. Like in our core, we're bigger Marvel fans. So it's really weird for me to be like promoting these, like DC is doing it better. But right now, DC is doing it better for me. Like there's a lot of books I'm getting excited for. Again, I think Green Lantern, Superman, who I'm not a big Superman fan by any means, but both Absolute Superman and Superman are books I'm really enjoying. So, and then the indies are always great because you get to do whatever you want, right? So like it's easy to find an indie that you like. You just gotta explore a little bit.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I am enjoying DC more than Marvel right now myself too. I just think there's some decent titles out there. And they're just really trying to, you know,
Tell
get
stories.
people hyped. I mean, just take, for example, Batman for tomorrow, you know, I mean, that's that book from what I found out, I think through comic shops sold like 400,000 copies. Like that's insane. That's really good.
I think they're just genuinely just trying to move the needle. I mean, Absolute titles are showing that, and they're just like really trying to bring a lot of energy to those. They have events that make sense, like the Superman event that's coming up. Like it's been building up. Like I just think they need to do. I think Marvel needs to do a little bit more of that.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to, we were talking about that Fantastic Four relaunch. So Fantastic Four is really relaunching. I probably will pick up the issue, but I'll say I didn't love the beginning of the Fantastic Four run, and it's pretty much the same creative team. It's the same writer, so I'm like, oh, you know, we'll
writer,
see.
yeah. It's got Herberto Ramos who does the art, so that's kind of cool. I always like his artwork. I've been reading Fantastic Four since One World Under Doom, and I'm not gonna lie, I actually like it. So I'm gonna stick with it, obviously, and then we'll see what this new run has to offer.
Yeah, and they're obviously putting a lot of energy into it because of the movies. So at least I mean, I love the Fantastic Four, so I will at least pick it up again. All right, moving on to Avengers Academy Assemble is getting a book. So these are a reprint of the Infinite Scroll thing that they have. I think it's no, that's DC's version. It's Infinity Comics. So it's their web comic, and they're finally publishing through printed media, which is great. The Kid
Right.
Juggernaut's supposedly a big character.
Is
Yeah,
he?
no, I supposedly he's getting his own comic too. So I'm like, all right,
Like,
cool.
I
I don't know
don't
who he
get it.
is.
Like, how do you have a kid Juggernaut? Like, come on, man.
Yeah,
Like, there's some characters that I get that are legacy characters, right, or idolized or other, and then you got Kid Juggernaut. Like, it always feels for me like there can only be one freaking Juggernaut. Why do you need a kid version?
Well, especially, yeah, I mean, Juggernaut's still around. Like, and again, I don't know if they're building toward, like, if Juggernaut had his own series and they like built this story between him and Kid Juggernaut, that feels a little different to me. But this is like, yeah, let's just do Juggernaut, I guess. But yeah, there's a lot of stories I want to read in the Infinite Comics, but again, they're hard to read. They're hard to like actually get a hold of. You can't just like buy a single issue. You have to be part of their like subscription format. And then it's not like you go on Comixology and you just read it. It's like you gotta go on their website and like figure out everything there. So I never really like reading them, honestly. I think there's even been
Right.
some Spider Girl stories and I haven't really read them because it's hard to read. So I like when they get printed, like the Jeff stuff. I love the Jeff stuff, so that's cool. And I'll give this a shot. I want, honestly, I wish Marvel would print more of these because they do seem fun. They seem out there. So I'll pick this up.
I don't know if I will.
Understandably.
When I found that it's from the
Right.
the app or whatever it was, I was like, yeah, really? I don't know if I really, because it's not technically new anymore.
Sure.
It's might be new for people that don't read it on the app, but it's like, how many people are going to be like, oh yeah, Kid Juggernaut? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
No,
There's a line.
Disagree.
There's just a line. Like, I'm always optimistic about younger versions of characters or different versions of characters, which I've always been fine with. Like, we've had Miles Morales and Ms. Marvel and Sam Alexander and and Amadeus Chow. Like, I've always been fine with those. And then you got these new champions that have just come out, which they're actually pretty much somewhat original characters, but they're familiar. Then it's like, okay, so now we're even going further. And then it's just like, I don't know. There just comes to a point where you need to stop, I don't know, replicating characters.
I wish it was more like Miles Morales and Miss Marvel. Like what worked about those characters is that there felt like there was a foundation and it felt like they wanted to do something with them. I think
Right.
with these random characters, like, oh, let's see what sticks to the wall. And Miss Marvel had like such a the foundation being her being a Muslim character and wanting to explore that that heritage and her being like the next friendly neighborhood superhero. And then Miles obviously built off of the death of Spider-Man. Like there was reasons to tell those stories. I think a lot of times, like again, was Kid Juggernaut's story? I don't know. It's just like that he's just Kid Juggernaut. There's no like building up to that moment. At least again, maybe
Right.
he does, but I'm using him as an example.
Right.
All right, let's move on.
I agree. I mean, I totally agree. It's, you just can't just throw out characters and then all of a sudden expect you to like them. So, like, I go back to this new Champions book, and it's like, how many times are they reiterating, hey, this is this character and this is that character? Because they're trying to get you to remember who these characters are without having this in-depth story about them, you know?
No, I definitely agree. All right, moving on to Deadpool celebrating 350, and he's gonna have a new villain, and it's gonna be a celebration as they always do.
What was that? I'm sorry, I was reading a comment.
No, it's okay. So this is going to be Deadpool celebrating issue 350, and there's gonna be a new villain in the book.
That's cool. I think I saw the villain on the cover when I looked at the article, and she looked kind of badass. I'm not gonna lie. And so again, with Deadpool, the book has been really well done. So there hasn't been really an issue that I've disliked with it. And I think it balances itself out real nicely. And so if we have another new villain, hey, that's fine, man. Just keep rolling with it. I like what he's doing with the character.
All right, next up is New Thunderbolts, and we have the writer is Sam Humphries, art is Tom Lima. And I love Sam Humphries. I've enjoyed a lot of his writing, so I'm very excited that he's on board with this one. The Browser is Namor. Don't love Namor. But we have Hulk, it looks like, Carnage, Laura, Winter Soldier, Black Canary. I mean, not Black Canary. Black Widow. I don't know who that other character is. There's like another woman. Clea? I don't know who that. Oh, Clea is the one who was the Doctor Strange character, right?
Yeah, the wife. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a mixed match for sure.
Is it bad? When I looked at the roster originally, I didn't even know Namor was there on that picture. I was looking at everybody else. And I think the roster is pretty cool, except for Namor. I think it's a nice little mix of characters there.
I'm curious how like Laura is going to play a part. Because obviously Winter Soldier and Black Widow, they've interacted before. Hulk, he's been on the Avengers before. But like Laura, I'm curious what that energy is going to bring.
It's just to bring that Wolverine character in there, you know? Yeah. But it's like you kind of got like, you got the soldiers, right? You got the, you got the spy, and then you got the sorcery, and then you got the one that's a little insane with, Carnage. You got the brute force. What does Namor bring? What is
Water, I guess.
What does he bring to fight characters underwater? And then you got Laura there, who's, she's the one that it depends like how they write her, right? Are they going to write her like in her book where she's just like overly angry all the time?
See, I dropped that one too. That was one that I had to drop because I was just like, all right, well, like I like it enough, but there's too many books out.
Right. Exactly. So we'll see. But I'm buying it. I'm checking it out though.
Me too. I'm gonna check that one out. All right. Next is so something revealing and shocking is gonna happen in Wolverine issue 400. I don't read Wolverine right now, so I don't know what shocking thing is gonna happen, but they're teasing a shocking reveal. Do you read Wolverine?
I do read Wolverine. Okay. Yeah. It's been one story arc pretty much since its launch right now. It has to do with this gold atomanium stuff, and it's like possessing all of his enemies and all these different things. So I don't know what 400 could bring, but I don't know. We'll see. I'll read it.
All right. Next up is one of the bigger news pieces. Joe Quesada is returning to Marvel, which honestly kind of quick. I know he was doing his own thing.
Yeah, I'm shocked about that.
And he's going to return in Marvel Knights, which obviously he was very known for. And then the only teaser they really have is the world to come. But yeah, no, that's actually the shocking part. Because I remember Joe Quesada left to do an imprint with Mad Cave, I want to say. And maybe he's still doing it. I don't know what the story is there. But he was like doing his own thing. And now, I want to say that was like a year. Like that wasn't even that long ago that he was doing that. And again, I don't know if he still is. But now he's back to Marvel. And again, something that's really comfortable, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but I'm like, we have seen Joe Quesada do this already.
Right. And who knows? It could be just a project that he's doing because he's not tied to Marvel anymore. You know what I'm saying? So maybe it's just something that he's doing while he's doing other things.
Yeah.
So it could be cool. I might check it out.
Next up is Mark Waid's Dream Project, the new history of DC, the DC universe. Back in the day, he did like the history of the DC universe, like in the 1990s after like Crisis and all that. So I think this is just his new version of it. I read some of that history stuff back in the day, but I feel like they're really pulling Mark Waid too many directions, and I think it's kind of lessening his writing. There hasn't been anything that's been like even just like Unlimited. I think it's just fine. Like I'm reading it, like I enjoy the characters, but there's nothing that's blowing my mind as much as when he first started on World's Finest, or even go all the way back to like when he was writing Archie. Like I loved his Archie.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that he's just doing a lot of stuff right now. I mean, he's also doing Batman and Robin Year One. He's doing that series too. So he's doing that. Justice League Unlimited.
He's still doing World's Finest, I want to say.
Still doing World's Finest. And I'm not sure if he's doing something else on top of it.
I think he's doing the Superman event. I think he's doing a story in there. So there's a lot going on.
That's a lot. I mean, and eventually you're gonna get tired, man. It's just the way it goes, you know? So we'll see. I don't care about the Dream Project history thing. Like I don't want to read history stuff.
No history for you. All right, next up is the Marvel Pride one shot. The only reason I wanted to talk about it was I just thought it was cool that Kitty is on it officially now, because they really were like trying to not really talk about Kitty being bi until this year. So I thought that was cool. Let me see if there's anything else. But I think that was it. I really want to talk about is just that Kitty was on it. Because I mean, most of the time the prides are pretty similar. They pretty much explore the same characters, and I didn't really see anything different from the either two. But that was like the only thing I saw that was different. So that was cool.
Well, it's good that she's on there, because people keep thinking, oh, since when is she bi? She's always been bi. So
yeah, no, she's been yeah, exactly. So I think that's cool. I don't know if she'll have a story or not, but it's cool that she's on the cover.
Right.
I think Black Cat always usually has a story too, so it seems like they'll highlight her. So
cool.
All right, cool. Let's go to Trinity miniseries coming out. It looks like it's gonna be like a kiddier version. What I thought was interesting in the talking point I want to have, and obviously you don't read Wonder Woman, but Trinity's been teased for like 2 years. They're like, oh, we're gonna do something, and like they never do anything with the character. So it's like, I don't know. It just feels weird. Feels like lost potential to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess it's one of those things. Same thing. You just gotta wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I will pick it up though, because I am still reading Wonder Woman. So again, hopefully this actually explores the character from what we've been waiting for, because it's been a while. All right, moving on to Robin and Batman miniseries. What I think is so fascinating about this is they have so many Batman and Robin books that they have to reverse the order just to make it a different book. Because right now we do have the Batman and Robin book. We have the year one book, and now they're like, let's do another one. And it's Lemire. I like Lemire, so I'm like, maybe it's Jason Todd, but it's too much.
This is a sequel to the one that came out like, I don't know, I want to say it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it said 2022. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that series actually was really, really, like, it was freaking good from what I remember. And so,
yeah, I remember liking it.
Yeah, I think this will be good. But you're right though. Like, we got so much Batman stuff, so much Batman and Robin stuff. It's like, I get it, it sells, but it's like sometimes when there's so much of one thing. I mean, we do it with Spider-Man, we do it with Batman. It's like you can't buy them all,
Or at least give a different Robin. At least this one was Jason Todd. Most of the time, it's always Damian. It's Dick. Hardly ever see Tim. It's like, at least give me a different Robin if you're gonna do it.
Yeah, right.
Give me a different story. Did you guys talk about Dustin Nguyen calling out Marvel? I didn't know he did, so that's why we didn't talk about it. Didn't know he called Marvel out. All right, we are moving on to Emma Frost having a mini series. Again, this was one of those things that I did not see until I saw the solicits. I'm like, oh, cool. She's having a series. And it goes back to, again, does Batman and Robin have too many series? Yeah. Does the X-Men have too many solo series? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cross series? Yeah. So I'm like, it's enemy here too.
It's 5-issue mini series written by Amy Chu.
Like, I'm game for it. Like, I want an Emma Frost series. But also you have a exceptional X-Men that she is the main character in.
Right. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll try it. I'll see what it's like. I just don't know. I mean, we just have so many X-Men books, and I feel like Psylocke wasn't bad. I thought Magic started off okay, but nothing like really sits there. Again, nothing sits there and really like blows your mind. And I feel like Storm is a really decent book, but I don't know if it's for everybody, but the artwork is absolutely gorgeous. Like, it's a visual masterpiece looking at that book. When it comes to like the others, they're okay. There's nothing so special about them. And, $5 is $5. And so you're taking a chance here. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll try out the first issue. I always try out the first issues at least.
And then speaking of books that need to exist, and I'm not being sarcastic because I'm very excited about this. Runaways is returning, and it's going to be part of the Doom event. And what I think is really cool about this is that Rainbow is returning to the book too. So for people who the book like me, Rainbow's writing it, so it's not like some random. Sorry, my computer's pausing a little bit. So can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. The tab for comic book resources was like really pausing my screen for a second. But no, it's Rainbow, which I think is great. Like for people who love Runaways like I did, like it's so great to like get that back. And it seems like she's continuing her story too. It's where Nico was at. It's like Nico doesn't have anyone anymore. Like Carolina left and talking about all our other friends that left. But it also seems like it's tying into the Doom event because Doombot was part of Runaways. He was part of the team. So they're actually exploring an element that was part of Runaways to explore to this event. So I'm very excited. It's these type of books are the reason I like comics. You know, it's just following a series and like getting your favorite writer again and getting good art. It's like,
Right.
oh, right. You could be excited for a Marvel book again. And I'm
Oh,
very,
that's
very
cool.
excited. You know, it's
And
like the
it's
exceptional
time.
X-Men thing. It's not for everyone, but when you have stuff like that, cult fan
Right.
favorite stuff, you're making someone happy. And I think Marvel needs to do more of that. Like bring the Miss Marvels back but bring a lot of energy behind it. Like if you had G. Willow Wilson return to Miss Marvel, that'd be crazy, you know?
It would be crazy. I mean, but she's doing a bang up job on Poison
Yeah.
Ivy. Like if you read Poison Ivy, you might actually like it because it's I almost regret dropping it originally. You know what I'm saying? Because artwork is so beautiful in that book, and the way she writes the character is great. And it almost reminds you of how solid of a writer she actually is, and probably reminds you of, yeah, she wrote Miss Marvel really well when it
Yeah.
first came out, and no one has been able to duplicate that yet. And I feel like that's why that title tends to struggle because no one can write her that particular way,
Because
you
Miss
know?
Marvel, what I loved about that book is that she created a world. It wasn't just the characters. Again, she created like interesting villains. She created like her supporting characters were a big part of that story. Like she built things around Miss Marvel. I think a lot of times when Marvel in particular releases books, especially like a Miss Marvel or Spider-Gwen, they're usually just fighting a random villain and there's no like soul behind it. And again, this is my opinion. I'm not saying it's bad writing or anything. It's just for me personally, I don't find a connection. I just don't feel
Yeah.
like they're writing past a third issue.
Mhm.
It's like I want to know what the bigger picture is. Like when that
Sure.
original Spider-Gwen came out, you could tell there was a bigger picture. Here, I'm not really sure what that bigger picture is because they have to make, Marvel editorial happy in the regard of like Spider-Gwen's not allowed to be in her own universe, which is like, what the hell is a Spider-Gwen story without her being in her own
Right.
universe?
That's the whole reason why she was created. She was created in that universe. And then you take her out and you're just, I don't know, it's so dumb.
Yeah, so that's why like seeing Runaways return with Rainbow is so special because she gets to like create a story like this thing that she's been continuing for years. Like she actually had
Oh,
a lot of issues on Runaways. Like it's cool to see her like go back to that world and like play in that sandbox again and do big things with the characters again. And who cares? It's now connected to an event, which honestly, Runaways after the Brian K. Vaughan stuff, that's kind of how that series lived. It lives through mini series of events. That's why they were remembered until they were able to have their own ongoing again. So it's cool. I'm happy it's happening in Pride Month, and I'm sure they did that on purpose. So I thought that was cool. So I'm very, very excited for that book. All right.
yeah,
I don't know if
question.
yeah, go on.
It says, have you guys ever read The Power Fantasy? I think I read the first issue, and for some reason, I don't know, I couldn't get into it. So I have not read it since.
I also did not. I didn't read the first issue for that one, so not too much thoughts on that. All right, moving on to VR Troopers are getting a comic. So this is Power Rangers stuff, Saban and all, and I think Hasbro, I guess now owns VR Troopers. It's kind of like similar style storytelling of Power Rangers. Power Rangers fans wanted it, so it's cool. They showed up in the most recent Power Rangers stuff, and now having a spinoff. I don't know much about VR Troopers just because I didn't really grow up with it. I'll try out the first issue, see what the hell? I
Nope.
literally don't know anything about VR
No,
Troopers. I don't know.
no, I'm not doing VR
No
Troopers.
VR Troopers for
It
you.
is my kind of my time, but I
Mhm.
just, again, it's just something about like Power Rangers and VR Troopers and all this other stuff. Like, I don't know. I couldn't really get into all that.
Yeah, I remember the only Power Rangers book you really liked was the Kimberly one, which I had
Yeah.
another friend read it, and he was like, "Oh no, like you don't need to read Power Rangers to
No.
understand this. Like it's just a
That
really good
Kimberly book
story."
was
Yeah,
really freaking good. I really
yeah.
like that
I
book.
hope they make a sequel for it. I really
Yeah.
liked it as well. have you guys heard news about the Captain Planet returning comics? I think we talked about it in a previous. Yeah, I think we talked about it in a previous episode. But I'll pick up. I'm going to pick up the first issue.
Absolutely.
All right. Last two news pieces are, well, at least one of them is one of the bigger ones. But Valiant is going to be releasing through IDW, and it'll connect to one of the bigger ones. But yeah, that's interesting. So what it seems like is that they used to use Diamond, so now they are distributing through IDW. And so that's the story. I don't know how that works, but sure. I don't think it's like IDW owns Valiant, because Alien Books owns Valiant. I think literally they're just using IDW to release their comics, like to get it to comic book stores.
So do they have to pay IDW to distribute that books?
I'm guessing.
Is it a way for them to generate income? Because there has to be a benefit for that.
Yeah, I'm guessing they were just in a rock and a hard place, because Diamond doesn't exist, and they're like, we got to get. I genuinely don't know.
IDW ships their own books then?
I thought IDW was through like Penguin Random House. I thought, but I don't. Let me see if it explains it in the article. Let's see. So IDW is distributing to both comic stores and the book channel by Penguin Random House. Alien has not released a book since February. Yeah, it looks like they're just doing it that way they could get cash quicker. Because they're saying because of Diamond, they haven't been able to like get money and to distribute their book. So I think they're just using IDW as like a quick fix.
So they're desperate for money. That's basically what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
I mean, Valiant, to me, is on its like last legs as it is. Like, how many titles are they even releasing, at this point?
Yeah, it's interesting because Alien Books is an international company, and then Valiant is Valiant. So they like kind of are two companies in one right now. So they're doing like the international books, but they're also doing like the smaller Valiant stuff. So yeah, it didn't help that Diamond did its thing. Did you hear the rumor? Well, now they did buy. So someone did buy Diamond, and it was Alliance Entertainment, which supposedly they like distribute movie stuff. Let me see exactly what they distribute, but they're like more entertainment. They distribute. It was reported that affiliated of Universal Distributions for the Alliance game distributor. So it's like toys and collectibles, but it seems like, yeah, it's more movie stuff that they do. I've never heard of the company, so I don't know if it helps or harms, but I don't think the Todd McFarlane thing's happening.
Yeah, right. But I mean, if they buy them and then they distribute the comics through them, then there's that. And then it also doesn't hurt the toy collectible thing as well, because Diamond always distributed toys and statues and all that other stuff too. So it's just going to be a different people, that's all.
No. And
then whatever comics, I guess maybe they have left, they'll just send through that way.
Yeah, no, it will be. It's more of like, again, a wait and see type situation, because we don't have enough information. If it was like a Todd McFarlane, then it's a little easier to say, look, Todd does this and that, and there's conversation. Because it's a company we really just don't know. Yeah. It's like, let's see if it helps anything or.
And you have no idea, because it's like they could buy them, they could own them, and then maybe the same people run it, or maybe they just let go of it and then new people run it. Like, who knows? There's no real information. You just know that someone did buy them. So,
yeah. All right. Let's, that's all the news. I do have a couple of things to announce, and then we'll get into comics, but I got a few Kickstarters and an opportunity if you guys want to write comics. So first we'll talk about the opportunity. I do anthologies once or twice a year, and something I really like to try doing is writers or new artists to get hired and get paid. So we have a witch horror anthology. So it's for anybody. A lot of times we also do anthologies that are for specific groups. So like we did a trans anthology last year, which did great. It made $80,000 on Kickstarter. We done Bi Visibility because, that kind of started all on Bi. So that started the train of anthologies. And then now we're doing a horror witch anthology because we also want to see like a wide range of submissions. We have some cool names already attached that we can't announce, but we actually have some really cool cover art that's coming out. Some veteran writers and artists are attached to this book, but we are not announcing them until after its submissions. But we also have these open submissions, so you could have, again, newer writers and artists be a part of it too. So if you're looking to make your first comic book, or you already do write comics or draw comics, this is a really great opportunity, because if you get picked, you get paid. And yeah, you get published by a publisher. So we have that going on. And then speaking of Kickstarters, we do have Beast and Snow, $43,000 right now. We have 8 days left. It's about a Snow White, vampire version of Snow White and a werewolf version of Belle. They fall in love. This issue in particular is the origin story of the Evil Queen. So hopefully, guys, go check that out. I will have a link for that in the comments too. And then we have one more.
That is an interesting story. A vampire hooking up with a werewolf.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's like, again, it's also characters that you know. So like Belle is usually with the Beast, and she is the Beast this time. And then how has no one done Snow White as a vampire? We have pale skin. Yeah, we have a really fun time with that one. And then The Dancer. This is a book I've had for a long time. We finally have it in a complete collection. It's, if you like Batman in particular, I think you'll like this. It's a dancer / assassin, and when she was little, she witnessed her parents being murdered, like Batman. And in this story, she actually has to deal with her trauma. So that's kind of what the whole story is about. We actually just funded for that one. And isn't it nice to get a complete collection of a book? That's something we try to do too. So this is a complete story, so you can read it from beginning, middle, and end. So yeah, go check all that out. I'm seeing if there's any questions. Did you see the new movie for Snow White? I did, and I did not like it.
I heard it is done like really bad. Well, it did like bad. 43 million, which I feel for March is not horrible, but I think they had really high expectations for that movie to do like really well.
I think because also the buzz of how bad it was. I think people were just like, oh, maybe they'll hate watch it, but
is it that bad?
It's just boring. I almost wish it was worse, because it's just like, oh, when you see a bad movie, you get like Madam Web is a great example of like a bad movie you can have a good time with.
Right.
This is just not, there's maybe like a scene or two that you can laugh at, but most of the time it's just like, just boring.
Oh, that sucks, dude. That sucks.
I only saw it because we write the book. So my business partner, he was Phil, he was just like, oh, we have to go see it. We write a Snow White book. I'm like, but I don't want to. But he's like, we kind of have to go see it. I'm like, fine. Okay. So we went to go see it. And also he kind of wanted to see it a little bit. He's like, oh, I kind of want to see like how bad it is. So
yeah, he's kind of like, I low-key want to kind of see this book in this movie.
And no one else wanted to go with us either. Like, we tried asking everybody, and they're like, you go by yourself. And then he fell asleep 4 times during the movie.
Oh my God.
And I was like, you wanted to see this movie.
But so you want to talk about, are the absolute books the best comic books?
Yes, let's talk about the topic. Yeah, this is an interesting question, because it's also, we feel like we're in the middle of it, right? Because not all of them have come out, but I think they are some of the best grouping of comics, because I feel like it's very coherent, their stories, and I feel like they're all pretty up there in level of art and writing. But I'll also say I don't think everything's for everybody. Like, I was talking to my one of the managers at the comic book store. I was like, I really love Absolute Superman. And I'm like, I like Absolute Batman, but I also really like Absolute Superman. That was a sleeper hit for me. And he's like, oh, that's so surprising, because everyone I've talked to doesn't like Absolute Superman as much, but they love Absolute Wonder Woman. I'm like, that's shocking, because that's the one I like the least. Yeah. So it's like really shows like it's really hitting people in different place. And I've seen that too. I've seen a lot of people not have like a fan favorite. It's not, but I kind of like that. I like that it's just delivering different things.
I hear the same thing. Like, a lot of people are not into Absolute Superman. And I'm like, really? I'm like, I just find it, I don't know. I liked all the backstory, Krypton, the family, how like, why he's going to be messed up because he's witnessed his planet die, his parents die, you know what I'm saying? He wasn't a baby. And so it makes sense. And, but when it comes to the best books, I mean, you could probably almost say that about Marvel too, because they got their, alternate universe stuff going on right now. And
they do, but are they as all strong? Because like Ultimate X-Men, I don't hear anyone talking about that.
But people are pulling those books. Like, again, you have Ultimate Spider-Man and then there's Amazing Spider-Man. Like, it looks like that Ultimate Spider-Man outsells Amazing Spider-Man. You know what I'm saying? And I still feel that people like Ultimate X-Men, and I don't think it's for everybody, but I still think there's a good audience for it, and I think there's people that do like Ultimates, and then I think there's some people that actually hate Ultimates, but I do think that these books are, regardless whether they're Marvel or DC, I still think they're really selling pretty well. And I would say that obviously DC's a little bit newer with the absolute stuff at this moment. And so you have like these key or core characters that are selling. So it will definitely, we'll see what happens once the other books come out. Cause now we're getting the next wave, right? We just got Flash. We're getting Martian Manhunter. We're getting Green Lantern. So we're going to get to see like how those books do if they live up to like the Trinity. You know what I'm saying?
Right, and we'll talk about, and we have Green Lantern, I think, coming out too, and we'll talk about how we felt about Flash. But and what's interesting about the Ultimates is that it does remind me a lot of how people felt about the previous Ultimate books, because there's a lot of people who loved Ultimate Spider-Man that did not like Ultimate X-Men, and people that liked Ultimate X-Men that hated all the Avengers stuff, which was the Ultimate. So it is interesting to see. It's a similar vibe where it's like, I wish everyone was in the same veins. Like, I love all these books. Like, I would say for most part, and this is coming from a fan who's not as big as the Ghost Machine stuff, but when you love Ghost Machine, I've not talked to a fan who hasn't loved almost every title from Ghost Machine, because it is a similar flavor for everyone. And maybe for me, that's why I haven't been able to get into it as much, because it is such a similar flavor. But when it comes to, like, again, these absolute books and Ultimate, they're all so different that I feel like everyone's on different sides of the fence. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just it's hard to say something's the best when not everyone loves all the things coming out from it.
Sure. And I would say that some people like to compare like absolute Batman to real Batman and go, well, this is not Batman. It's not supposed to be Batman. It's not supposed to be the main universe Batman. So you shouldn't really have to compare. There's going to be differences there. There's supposed to be differences. So don't try to compare the characters. Just take the differences for what they are. Yes, there's similarities, but there's going to be differences.
You can't say, well, about this character.
Well, yeah, and you can't say, well, this character would never do that. Well, maybe in the main world, but not in the absolute world, so you can't think that way. And so just like how you saw like this past week, like Ultimate Flash, there were some different instances there, the way the characters are, that you might not even realize that's going on, or look at freaking Wonder Woman, right? Do you think the real Wonder Woman would ever have a fucking bionic arm? Like, seriously, right? It was like, oh, that would never happen. Of course, yeah. So, and I like that book. And so I'm looking forward to this next issue too, because you're going to get a different artist on that one.
Yeah, I want to try out that next issue, because again, I haven't been able to get into Ultimate Wonder Woman as much, but I want to try out this one in particular, because again, new artist, new like direction for the book. So I'm like, yeah, let me give it one more issue. And again, when you have these weeks when it's 30 plus books, it's like, we'll see how much I'm going to try it.
I think since they're the newest books and there's something a little bit, different about these characters, and you want to kind of check out these new characters. So I think for now, I think there kind of are probably the best selling, at least DC books out there, in my opinion, especially since it's not an overwhelming amount of them. And it is a good jumping on point. So we had the viewer before that's like, where do I jump on? These absolute books are good books to jump on with.
And they could surprise us too, because like if you read Amazing Spider-Man, a lot of times it's just the same thing over and over again. It's regurgitated because you can't change much. With something like Absolute Batman, you can do whatever the hell you want. You're like, wow, I didn't expect that to happen. And also Spider-Man's very similar in that regard too. And honestly, it's why I kind of tend to like the alternate books a little bit more. But then again, I'll look at book and I keep comparing Superman, but I feel like Superman does it the best, where it's like I read something like Superman, I'm like, oh, so you can do stuff with characters in the regular universe and make it feel big, but still make it feel like any other Superman book. I think that book does a really good job at that, where it's like every issue feels like something's happening without it, making something so different from Superman. Like, even Lois being a superhero, like we've seen it before, but in the way
we've
it's being
seen
told is
it.
different.
Yes, exactly. I agree with you 100%. Like, I was like, at first I was like, do we really need Lois with powers? But the way she's handling the powers and the way how she's going through kind of like trials and tribulations with having these things, I think is good. It's not like she's just picked up these powers and is like, oh, check me out. I got powers.
Right.
I'm freaking awesome. It's,
And the
you got to
twist
see
that's
that in the
connected to
last issue.
Zod too. Like, it's
Yeah.
connected to Zod. That's interesting. So
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
there's like a twist. You're like, I want to read more. So yeah, but going back to absolute stuff, is it the best comics on stands? It's some of the comics I get most excited to read. I'll say that. I think that's the best way to put it. And I think in my brain, that's the best type of comics. And the ones where you can't wait to go to the comic book store.
Right. I know people were talking about Absolute Batman, how the Absolute Batman, like you had Batman like punt this kid in freaking ocean in one of the panels. He was like part of the Black Mass gang or whatever it is. It's so funny. But it's over the top, and that's kind of what people like about this version of Batman. So
Tevye asks, do you think Superwoman was better than Jackpot? I think, again, it goes back to exactly what Mike just said. It was just like Jackpot kind of randomly got powers in most of the stories that she was told, and she kind of became a Mary Sue type character because of it. I would say her powers were. But then you read something like Black Cat and Mary Jane. I loved her in that. I thought she was great as Jackpot in that series. It just depended on the series. I think for Lois, she's mainly just in that Superman book, and she's mainly only written by Joshua Williamson, so it's just more cohesive.
right. Yeah. Jed McKay knows how to write Black Cat and Mary Jane and kind of thought out of the process on how she had her powers. You know what I'm saying? And even in the Jed McKay book, she didn't have the suit or anything like that. She just had these powers, and the powers had stakes. And so it felt like it was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then as soon as who was it? The female that wrote that jackpot book.
Oh, Leah Williamson.
I don't know if it was Leah.
No,
Williams.
she wrote Mary Jane. I don't remember who wrote Jackpot.
But
no, I agree. Yeah, the Jackpot series is more about Paul. It wasn't really about like what I also think worked about the Jed McKay one is it was about her relationship with Black Cat. It was about their friendship on top of her powers and her being, being a team player and like being a partner to Black Cat. So there's just like a lot of elements that were well written there.
Yeah, Jackpot was like, hey, look at me. I got a costume. Sure. Paul was able to nullify my power so I can't die anymore. And I'm the best superhero there is all of a sudden. It just doesn't happen that way, You don't
want even Spider-Man to be the best superhero because that's not fun. You want to see people go through struggles. Like Superman's not the best superhero, right? Even the strongest guy in the world who can't, even though he has died, but let's say can't die, it has trials and tribulations. That's what's fun about reading stories. Like you don't want people to be perfect.
Yeah. So like an instance for Superman this week, Absolute Superman that comes out, we're going to learn about the origin of how he became Superman. And then in Wonder Woman, we're going to learn Absolute Wonder Woman. We're going to learn where she got her weapons from and how they're forged. Like you're learning more about these characters. And I think that's very interesting. So definitely, I think a lot of people are buying it for the interest of these characters. So I would say that these are probably the best selling books in my opinion. So, all right. So let's dive into the books for this past week, kicking off with an Absolute book. So we got Absolute Flash issue 1. Jeff Lemire is writing it. I love Jeff Lemire as a writer. And of course, he made it a little wonky, all the stuff that was going on in it. There were some time jumps, which you can expect in the Flash book. I did find myself a little bit lost towards the end of it because I'm not sure, like, how did Wally get his powers and what happened to Barry? And maybe that was done on purpose. Sure. So it leaves this mystery element to it. And then at first I'm like, who are these characters that are in this book? And then I didn't even realize it's the Rogues Flash's Rogues Gallery until I like looked back on it a couple of times, but overall it was a pretty good book and I am on board with it.
Me too. And honestly, I like the twist. Like obviously Barry's death in the end, question mark, the way the rogues look, Wally's dad's and his relationship. I do think this was a little slower compared to your Wonder Woman's and your Batman's.
Yeah.
But I thought the artwork really made up for it.
Yeah.
The art, I actually think is the best art out of all the stories. Like I really like the artwork a lot for this one. It's very bright, right. Felt different.
Yep. And the colors were just like right there in your face. And I absolutely loved it. So I'll definitely check out the next issue for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Hopefully, though, it's not too time jumpy to the point where you can't follow it. You know what I'm saying?
I hope not. I was okay following it this issue, but yeah, if it's like every issue, it's going to get a little bit more. But also, I like want to see other characters. Like obviously, you want to see like Iris and characters like that. So
well, you never know. We'll see. All right, so I'm going to talk about real quick about these two books. We got One World Under Doom, issue 2, G.I. Joe, issue 5. One World Under Doom, pretty decent. I mean, you got Doom, who is super smart right now. He's planning for all contingencies. He is Lord Emperor Doom, right? He's in charge of the world. The Fantastic Four are trying to stop him, and they just fail. And Dr. Doom makes the Fantastic Four look freaking stupid. And it's sad to see these guys look so stupid, as smart as they are. And as many times as they face Dr. Doom, you would think they would have a better plan, right? And again, Dr. Doom makes them seem like they're the ones that are evil, and he is the one that is good. And he shows them mercy by turning like Ben Grimm into human form once again. So it's been done. But it's all right. I like it. I think it's interesting. I want to see how this whole thing turns around. And then
I dropped this one for this issue, but I did read the first issue for that one. Gotcha. I was like, not another event, and I don't read Fantastic Four. I'm good.
And then G.I. Joe is a book that is in my top 5, so I'll talk about it when we get to that point.
Cool.
So speaking of our number 5, what was your number 5 this week?
Mine was You Never Heard of Me. It's that Dark Horse book. It's about this kid who, if they go near that person, could tell where their life is going to go and like what their past is. And what's interesting about this issue is that there's this kid who he can't see the future for. So he's like, well, he's going to die. So him and his friend are like figuring out like, how do we prevent him from dying? And it's just like a fun, like slice of life book in that regard. So I like it. It's sometimes you need that palate cleanser. It's like more popcorn flick, character driven. And I'm having a good time with this one.
That's good. My number 5 was actually Sonic the Hedgehog in DC. Not funny. For saying that I thought it was the best comic book or one of my favorite comic books. But the reason why is because I think this is a great book for all ages. And I think this is a great book for like maybe younger gamers to get into comic books. And whenever a company does this, like, puts two genres together and tries to get a wider audience into comic books is a great thing. And I thought the story was fine. Like, you have Sonic the Hedgehog and all his little people with him. And you got the DC characters coming in, and they all team up with a particular character, right? Like you got Flash teaming up with like Sonic. You got Shadow teaming up with Batman. You got Amy who teams up with like Wonder Woman. So it's kind of cool seeing the dynamic between all of those characters. And then the reason why this whole thing happens is because Darkseid comes into the world, into their world, Sonic's world, and trying to collect these Chaos Emeralds. And again, I think if you're a Sonic fan, if you're a gamer, if you're a DC fan, younger reader, older reader, I think this book hits all the marks. And it's great for comic books. So for that, I got to at least give it, put it in my top 5 for the week.
No, those like you said, those comics don't always come around, so it's nice when they do.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about the next Absolute comic book. What did you think about Absolute Batman issue 6 here?
This is an
story arc.
This was an interesting issue because I was at the comic book store again. I was talking to the manager and I was saying, like, yeah, Absolute Batman was my favorite. But then, you know, I felt like it really slowed down. And I thought this issue actually did a really good job at like picking things up again because it was definitely more character driven, where we get a little bit more from Bruce's mom, who I really like because she's the dark horse. You don't know where she's gonna go. She's the one that doesn't exist in the regular comics. But then you have like characters that showed up, like Alfred's daughter, which we know was not, I don't know if she was created with Scott Snyder, but she was expanded upon in Scott Snyder's run. So having her was really interesting, and knowing what is going to happen there. I think they had the Joker ending. I forget which villain was at the end.
The Joker's at the end.
Joker, Bane, I think.
Yeah, it's like I think it's a mashup between the two. It's interesting because it's like he's got white skin or whatever it is, and then they pump him full of drugs, and I think he's like normal again. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
So I like that too. I just thought this was like what I felt like with issue 1. I was like, yeah, this is the Absolute Batman I really liked then, but it took a little while to get here. But when you finally did, it's like, okay, cool. We're back in action.
Yeah, I like the book too. I thought it was fun. I love seeing the action scenes. I like how he takes on the Black Mask Gang again, and just all the different power sets that he has. There's just funny moments like on what he does to his victims. It's just so hilarious. And it again, the ending left with a great cliffhanger to maybe kick off things going forward in the next story arc. And you said it already. Like I want to see the continued character growth with his mom. So that will be cool. So yeah, Absolute Batman actually wasn't in my top 5. It would probably be like number 6 for me, because I did like some indie comics pretty much better than that. And so, I am really interested to hear your thoughts on Saga issue 72.
I was really disappointed with this one because I love Saga. Like it's most of the time in my top 5. And this is like the end for a while. Like they're going to take another hiatus. In the end, they're like, oh, it won't be, I promise it won't be as long as the last one. And the way they promoted this issue is like, this is going to be like bigger than Marco's death. And I'm like, oh man, I'm really excited. And it's really not. It's like them reacting to news that we won't really know how it affects the book until it's in motion. It's the robot people saying like, oh, we're pulling out of the war. Like, good luck. And everyone reacts to it. But we don't know what that means yet. You know, so it's just
truce is like what is happening. People are all on edge, and you're kind of like, okay. And this had nothing really to do with Hazel. This had nothing to do with what's her name? Is it Alana?
Alana, right? Alana. I don't know how to pronounce it. I mean,
and it's just this book I felt has totally lost its way. Like, when was the last time we even had an issue? Right? It seems like a couple of months, even since we had the last issue of this. And
71 came out.
And now we're going on like another like actual real hiatus. Like, what is going on? Like, I feel like I'm totally out of this series at this point where I don't want to even read it anymore because it doesn't interest me. When it came out every month on the first 50 something issues or whatever it was, I was like so engaged every single time. It was like a must read. There was something interesting, shocking. Just the ending of a book was so good. And now it's so boring. There was just nothing here.
I like when the character moments shine. Like, I like when we just see Hazel hanging out, or like, I think the best parts of last arc was like her and her brother, like just seeing her brother like kind of go through this depressive spell. Like, those are things I really enjoy about Saga.
Shipped out now.
Yeah, and they kind of talk about it a little bit in this issue, but not really. And then they're like going to like her father's house, like Elena's father. I'm like, I don't know if I care about that. So obviously I am going to see it through. I want to see what happens in the end. And I do like the series, but I was pretty disappointed with this issue. I really thought it was going to be much bigger than it ended up being.
Yeah, totally. Got a nice little comment here. It says, Comic Count says, hey, comic fans, make like Magneto and manipulate that like button for our dedicated hosts. Yeah, guys.
I like that.
Thank you for watching. And again, it just hit that like button. It takes a second while you're listening. It definitely helps, right? All right, so let's keep going. The Avengers issue 24. Uh, the
I don't know how you
Avengers,
still read this series.
I have stuck with this a long time.
Yeah.
And because I like Jed McKay, and I think
Right.
most of his stuff is good. But this series, this is not really going anywhere. And I knew that Black Cat was coming to this book. So that's why I've kind of stuck around with it. And the way the book ended was pretty solid because Black Cat was in it. Now, if you took away Black Cat out of this book, let me tell you, this book would have sucked because it's nothing different than we've been getting this entire freaking time. It just seems one big fight after the other.
Right.
And everything that was introduced in the very first couple issues kind of happened and ended in this issue here. So it was a Kang issue. Kang manipulated Black Cat to get something that he wanted. Of course, the Avengers wound up winning. And now it's going to go into One World Under Doom for the 25th issue. And we'll see what happens after that. I don't know. I think, obviously, since it's connected to the event, I'm going to try it. And then after that, I probably will drop it. Because for 25 issues, there hasn't been anything special. You reading a comment?
Yeah, I was reading. We're competing with Sasha Casually Comics this evening. I don't know the person, but I'm always interested to know like who's doing live shows. But
oh yeah,
we've been sticking around this. We've been sticking around this time for a while.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. All right. So what's your number 4, Kat?
Mine is I think it's believe it or not, I think it's Exceptional X-Men. Yeah. A little lower than usual. Because they do focus on that newer character, one of the students a little bit more.
Yeah. I read this because of the event.
And that was another reason I hated that part of this issue where they had to shoehorn the Charles Xavier stuff. I'm like, it like interrupted the whole story. And it didn't really add much. You're just like Charles Xavier. And they kind of like go back to what they were doing. I did not like that. And I mean, the Mr. Sinister stuff was interesting in the end, but I'm here for Kitty and Emma. And they didn't really do much in this issue.
So it's funny because I'm mad for the completely opposite reason that you are. I wanted, if you're going to tie in something, right? If you're going to make it part of the crossover with all the X books, don't you think you should add more than a freaking couple of panels? And all Bobby says is, hey, Charles Xavier escaped out of prison. And blah, blah, blah. And you're like, that seems so forced. It wasn't even funny. Like, it doesn't belong in this story. And that's all you do. That's what you call it tying into the story of what's going on with Charles Xavier. It was horrible. Horrible.
I haven't liked this event because of that. They forced to have parts in every single X-Men book. I'm like, did you really need to be in every single X-Men book? You probably could have kept it to Uncanny or X-Men. I remember X Factor did a pretty good job at it. I actually really liked how X Factor added it all together. But something like this, like Charles, X4,
you don't.
I thought X Factor did. No, you're right. No, X-Force or X
did the best, I think.
X-Force is the one with Havoc.
No, that's X Factor.
Yeah, no, I thought X Factor did a good job too. I'm pretty sure the last issue.
Though?
No, I didn't read X-Force.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay.
I read X-Force for I've read all these. I haven't read all these books in a while, but
you read it for the event.
I read it for the event. And when you say you're going to cross over in an event and do it with all in the books, do it right. And I think X-Force did it right because a major plot point happened with Charles Xavier in this event. Like, he has this tumor, he's dying, and his daughter is, risk dying as well. And he's got to try to get to her. And there's this specific egg that he's trying to use for resurrection. It's the one last egg. And in that issue, he winds up using Sage to help him hatch that egg. And then you find out who is in that egg. And it's a big deal. Like, it continues that story really well. And then the story after that is Exceptional X-Men. And it doesn't say shit. Like, except that Xavier escaped jail.
But
He's
also,
already escaped jail and fucking went to space. Like,
but
you're
why tie it
behind.
in? But why tie it in at all? Because this book is so not an X-Men book. It's so its
Right.
own thing. Like,
Right.
why have a part in it at all? Like, you're disrupting
Right.
the story for people who enjoy Exceptional X-Men, and then for someone like you who want to just read the event, it doesn't do anything. So it's just like, what was the point?
Yeah, I don't know what the point was in that. They should have just never just mentioned it or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
So, all right. So where are we at here? That was your number 4?
Yeah, that was
Exceptional X-Men.
Mm.
Mine was Bug Wars issue 2.
I had to drop that one for this week because I liked issue 1 well enough, but I had too many books this week, so I was like, all right, I think Bug Wars is the one. So
you dropped it before you even get it? Oh wow!
Because I liked the first issue enough, but there wasn't anything where I'm like, I have to get issue 2. So that was the reason I didn't get that issue. We just, but if it was a lighter week, I probably would have gotten the issue.
Right? Yeah, it was a good issue. I mean, you get to see the main character. He winds up, what's his name is Slaymaker or something like that. He winds up getting shrunk down, right? He's part of the he's getting to learn like all the different factions of all the different bugs, and there's this truce going on with all the different factions, and that truce is because of his older brother, who's the one that creates who has the lawnmower to like run them all over. So they want to kill him. So there's going to be this issue going on with them wanting to kill his brother, right? But we didn't get back home yet. He's still super small and whatnot.
Yeah,
and
I figured that'd probably be a big
he's discovering his powers. Like, he doesn't know how to control them, how to grow big again, and things like that. But it was really good. I liked it. Not quite like A+ material, but it was like A- for me, because there is a lot of like lore going on and just learning all the different bug factions and all that other stuff. So, okay, so let's move on to, I think we're on Detective Comics. What did you think about Detective?
This is interesting because I was talking to Phil about, because he's a really big Batman fan, but he's not like currently reading Batman books. So I was telling him about the Joe Chill thing. And I was just like, yeah, like, and I haven't really thought about it in a while because they haven't really talked about it as much as they do in this issue, where they're kind of retconning stuff. Joe Chill used to be just this guy, and now they're acting it and being like, well, actually, his parents worked on him, and maybe he knew and maybe he didn't. And I think I'm so used to comics that I'm just like, oh, they'll like Batman had a brother in the last, it's fine. Like they're gonna pretend like that didn't happen. But it is interesting to hear from like someone who hasn't been reading Batman in a hot second and be like, wait, well, like they're retconning it? I'm like, I guess, but I have a feeling they're not, you know? So it's such a weird plot point where it's like interesting enough that they're exploring it. But if you actually do analyze it more, it does take away from the whole point of Batman's parents being killed, right? It's supposed to be a random guy. Like, that's the thing. That's the trauma. So to make him not a random guy kind of takes away from the story.
Right, exactly. No, I agree. I mean, you know, it's still a decent read. I mean, I do like it. And I do feel like we're starting to get to the point now where we're getting that Tom Taylor effect where things are taking a little bit longer to tell a story. It's a little bit drawn out, right? Like, so in this issue, it's just like she got exposed. I think that's the big deal, you know, but we still don't know who the villain is yet, you know? So how long are we going to drag that out for, right? So I thought it was still good though. I still like it. It just, again, wasn't in my top 5. And there was an artist change. It wasn't the usual artist on it either.
No, I think Janet was on it.
Was it? It seemed different.
No, I think he was on it. I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure that was his art. Let's see. No, yeah, he was on it.
Okay. It seemed different.
Maybe there's other pages that he didn't do. Like maybe he was like, because you're right, it does look different.
Right?
I think pages 1 to believe it or not. Okay. So they have his name as like the big name, but then on the bottom, like the lower bottom, it says like page 1 through 17 by somebody else.
Oh, okay. So most of the book.
Yeah. Yeah, most of the book, honestly.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that his name is like in big lights, and then the artist who did most of the issue was like the small little blurb on the
Right.
bottom.
I did because I noticed that. I noticed the characters' facial expressions were different. They weren't as detailed, so. All
Oh, he
right.
inked and colored the other issues, but not this one. So maybe that was
Gotcha.
it too. Maybe he didn't color it.
All right. So we'll talk about Miles Morales, Spider-Man, issue 31. This is the conclusion to the whole Deadpool and
Yes, I read it
Spider-Man
because of
crossover.
that. It was so interesting because this is so Miles Morales. Like, I don't love this series. Like, for a reason, like I dropped it. It's just not my thing. I love Miles. I just don't really love this version of Miles. I know you guys have been really liking it, but this was like so heavily on the Miles stuff where I'm like, I just kind of want to go back to Deadpool.
So I like the book, but the problem is like it went on too long. I
Yeah, it
just
didn't have to
thought
be 4 reports.
okay, now we're fighting like Agent Guile and or Gale or whatever her name is. And now she became like a god, and I'm like, okay, like now we've gone too far. We've completely gotten away from what that story was about. You know what I'm saying? And it was like so not necessary. And then when it ended, there was just a lot of just like talking heads going on. And then we wound up getting to like the Thor stuff and the Ares stuff. And it was just like, okay, now we become a Thor book. So it was just getting ready for the next story arc. I think the last 5 or 6 pages, I'm like, I'm over this. This needs to be done at that point. So just looking back, I'll still read Miles. I think it's good. My issue with the Miles series is I feel like the storytelling is a little bit drawn out within the story arcs.
I could see that.
With Deadpool, it doesn't feel that way.
We do have a question from, and I agree with that. I think it's because they have like a balance of humor and plot, so like kind of a bit more balanced there. Bronze Page says, "Welcome back, guys. Do you comic book series keep your interest, or do you lose interest after a few issues?" I mean, it depends on the series. I'm like really excited to read like Exceptional X-Men. Something I love reading. I'm like excited to go to the comic book store, and then there's stuff like Bug Wars where I'm like, oh, it was fine. Like I liked it enough, but it was easy for me to be like, oh, I won't get issue 2 because it's a heavy week.
Yeah, I'll read issues like, so for instance, like, I don't know, I'll read an issue and then 3-4 issues in, I'm kind of like, I'm not digging this as much anymore. And then I'll read another issue and then it starts losing interest. And then eventually I'll just drop it. It's just kind of the way it goes. If you have a comic book that's like that, then you should drop it. And that's kind of the problem that I have right now, because there's a lot of average books that I've been holding on to that I keep thinking that will get better, just like Avengers, like I've been talking about. And then when you hold on to those books, then
You're like, I've been reading it for so long.
Then your stack looks like freaking this,
Yeah.
right? So that this is all this week plus the ones that are right here, So that's all this week's books that I read. And that's what happens when you are hoping for books to get better and they just don't,
Yeah.
But okay, so where are we at now?
We're at Last Boys, I want to say.
Oh, Last Boy. Okay.
And I just realized, did you read LA Strong's? I marked it down, but I didn't actually, my comic book store didn't have it.
Why did I mark that one off?
But
maybe I just went down the road assuming that I did read everything that you No, I did not read LA Strong.
I'll take that one off because I just realized I was looking at that. I was like, I didn't read it because I don't think
I do know what it is, though. It kind of is just a bunch of like really like one stories, stuff like that on just the fires and all that. So, but
I wanted
to read it.
I wanted to buy it just to like support the LA fires, but I don't know when it's coming out. I don't know if it got delayed or my store didn't have it.
It came out last
Diamond
week.
stuff. It did definitely come out. So probably the Diamond stuff affected it not being out, which sucks because it's a charity book.
Yeah, it is.
So like it sucks because I really genuinely just wanted to buy it because of that. So I guess it did come out though. I didn't see where I could get it digitally, and I did not see it physically. So did not read it. But anyways, the book we were actually going to talk about is the Last Boy.
Yep. Lost Boy issue 1, Peter Pan story. It's like Peter Pan the sequel, with Peter Pan not wanting to grow up, but everybody else has around him has moved on. He's got Wendy, who is still living in the clouds, but she is, becoming like a writer, and she's writing stories, and she's got this like marriage coming up, but she doesn't seem like she really loves the guy, and she has
sounds
to
arranged.
yeah. So, and she's got to take care of her father, and her mom's trying to say, hey, you got to get out of your head out of the clouds and stuff like that. And then you get to see Peter Pan, who just like wants to create chaos with him and Captain Hook. And it was an interesting read. I mean, for me, I don't think it was like the best thing, but it was good enough to like check out issue 2 to see like the direction it goes.
I really liked it because it felt different from what you could do with Peter Pan. Like, obviously, the story has been retold many times, but I like that it wasn't just the idea that Peter Pan's not growing up, but everything around him is growing up. That's the thing I felt that was different. And I liked the ending. I thought him like accidentally killing Captain Hook, I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. But yeah, I liked it just because, again, it felt very different.
Do you know, I found myself most interested in Wendy's character.
I liked her a lot too with the writing and stuff. I thought that was really interesting. I liked it. I thought I definitely gave me enough for issue 2 as well. I wasn't even gonna like pick this up either, but I was like, you know what? Again, I write public domain books. I should like see what's out there. So I am glad I
it wasn't on my pull list either. But then I realized that, I need to get new #1 books to talk about in the show. And it was at my shop. So I was like, nah, why not? I'll try it.
We do have a question from the Rich. What happened to TVA comic? I think it was just a mini series. I only read the first issue.
I don't know. I could be completely wrong about that though.
Yeah, I didn't really read it.
What is your number 3?
Actually, that book we just talked about, The Last Boy. I was pleasantly surprised by it. Yeah.
Mine is actually Conan the Barbarian.
Is it like an issue 1 or?
No, it's not. People have been telling me to read it forever, right?
Okay.
And they're like, oh, Mike, you'll love it. It's so good. And so I read issue 17 and 18, and they weren't that good. They weren't that good. You got different artists on it. The artist wasn't that good. The story was just okay. And people were like, oh, yeah, you shouldn't have read those issues because those are probably not the greatest issues to read. So we finally get, I think, one of the 2 like alternating artists on this book. And, Conan's out there, and he was on this ship in the previous 2-issue story arc. And in the ship that he was on wound up getting burnt down, and his lover winds up dying in the process. But he's the only survivor on the ship, and he's in the jungle now. And you get to see him survive in this jungle. And the artwork is really good. And just the situations that he's in and what he has to overcome. And, he digs deep into his memories to help him get through tough situations. It was really awesome. And he's being stalked by somebody, and you find out who that person is at the end. Just a really overall, just a fun and exciting book. I had a blast with it.
Who
and
publishes it again?
This is done by who is it? Titan.
Okay, because I know it moved from
it was Marvel that did it originally, and then what's his name? Jim Zub is the one that writes it.
Oh, it's fun. He's usually a solid writer.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, so let's go on. Eddie Brock Carnage issue 2. You didn't read?
No, I read issue 1. And I just thought it was just fine. I was like, yeah, not again.
Right.
You got to drop some books to keep yourself sane.
Issue 2, I think, was good. I think there was a lot of talking heads because it was like him describing on what was going on and telling the reader, okay, this is me. This is what happened in the last issue. We got this plane and it went down, and he's telling the guy that he wants to kill. He's like, I got a problem with myself. I like to, kill people and all this stuff. It was good. It was good. But it was basically just like, me sitting at a table talking to somebody on the other side pretty much the entire time, except the end. And the end really picked up. And Eddie did something that caused human lives to die, and that's not, his thing. And I liked it. It was good. And I like the art in it, and I'm curious to see how it continues to actually go. So not bad.
The art is good. I remember it's the same artist who did that Punisher run.
The
I really
Punisher.
liked.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And then we got Titans issue 21.
I was pretty disappointed with this issue. I remember what Brant said the other
do
day.
I not remember reading this?
It was Psycho Pirate and what else happened? I don't remember. Psycho Pirate taking.
I didn't pick this up physically. I meant to read it digitally, and I forgot. I marked it off because it was on my list to read.
Mm-hmm. I'll think you didn't miss much.
I think I'm dropping.
Yeah, no, I think I have one more issue in May, and then after that, I just don't really. It's just the same old, same old. It's like, okay, cool. We've seen Psycho Pirate make everyone go against each other, and then the end's like Deathstroke. I'm like, I've seen this a billion times. I want to kind of see where Deathstroke goes because I'm a Deathstroke fan, but I haven't been loving this run much. So, and I know you were picking up because of Layman, but yeah, this issue you didn't miss anything.
Yeah, it's like we need to do something different besides Deathstroke. Right? I mean, that's why what I liked about what was it? Was it Beast World?
Yeah, Beast World.
Yeah. When they did that, and I thought that was a great story. I really, really did. And now you got this, and it just doesn't seem that great. The art, I feel like, is okay. Again, it's one of those books where you're kind of like, do I love it? Is it moving the needle? Is it getting any better? How many issues am I going to give it a try?
It's harder when it doesn't suck, right? Like when a book is bad, you're like, oh, I'm bored. But like when it's in that middle ground, you're like, I don't know what to do with it at that point. Yeah,
exactly. And I love the Titans, though. That's the thing. And you want, when there's no other Titans book, it's like you almost feel like, damn, do I have to read it?
Sure. So. I want more of the character growth because I remember Donna is the leader, and they did a cool thing with that in the first issue. And ever since, they haven't really explored that more,
right? Which would make a better story because you want to see her continuing to grow as a leader.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. Move on to number 2. What's your number 2?
Mine's Absolute Flash. We already talked about it.
All right, my number 2 is G.I. Joe. There it is, issue 5. Book is just awesome, man. It's just got a lot of action. This was an issue that definitely reminded me of the cartoon like when I was a kid. You wind up getting one of the Joes that was infiltrating the Cobra base. You got Cobra Commander kind of going at it with his plan here for for his mind control device to get people to become part of Cobra, and just a lot of different and great things in this book. And it's fun, and I always can't wait for the next issue. So that's when you got a great comic book, right? Sure. It's on the top of your pile, and you're like, oh man, it's a page turner, and before you know it, it's over.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely love books like that.
So let's move on now to Zatanna issue 2. I feel like this book is just not for me. I'm never a Magic person. I've said it 1,000 times, and this book is not like the Black Label book, which I liked. And I don't like really the supporting cast. I'm not like a Blue Devil fan. The only thing I found interesting was, 1, the artwork is beautiful. 2, she's got that sword protruding through her chest, and she's trying to get it out, and she's failing. And that was it, right? I really don't care anything else about the book, though.
No, I feel the same way because I love that last volume so much because I think it was so much more leaning on the magician aspect and her. This leans so much more on the mystic aspect, and I'm also not a big Magic fan. I might give it one more issue, but after that, I think I might drop this one too. It's just hasn't really sung to me yet. But we'll see. Maybe that next issue will improve, but I'm also kind of on the fence with it.
It's funny how it is with Magic. I think what it is I know in comic books you can pull anything out of your butt, right? But just magic, I feel like it's the biggest cop out. It's like, oh, I'm in trouble. I'm going to use my magic to get out of it. And it's like, okay, well, you got no weakness basically because you can use your magic to pull yourself out of any situation possible.
It's usually very lore explaining. It's very much like this did this because of this, and that. And it's very gothic. And those are just things I tend not to get behind as much.
It's like, let me
Which is
tell
why I
you.
like the magician stuff because that's more of like trick of hand. And it's like, oh, that's more fun, you know?
Right. It's like, oh, let me explain 20 minutes on why I can do this. You know, it's kind of almost the reason why I'm like not a big Doctor Strange fan. It's very similar fashion.
Mm-hmm. No, we're on the same page for that one.
This is a book that you really like, and I didn't get a chance to read it. I was, if I had time, I was going to try to read. I read issue 1. I didn't read issue 2, and I was going to try to read them back to back to see if I could like it. But I didn't get a chance to read it. So what did you think of this issue of Cable?
I continued to really enjoy it. It didn't make my top 5 just because there were so many books, but as a Cable fan, I enjoy it because I think it's a love letter to him. I think it talks about the virus really interestingly, but it's also kind of a fun romance comic where we get to see how much he cares about this woman. The woman also has the virus. So I just think it's a well-written superhero book that feels very different from what we've seen from Cable, but also feels very familiar to him. And I think it's an interesting balance. And again, is it something I say you have to go out of your way to get? I don't know, but I think it's a really cool under the radar book. So if you have the chance to read it before issue 4 comes out, go for it. I think you would like it, Mike, especially. I think you would enjoy it. But also, again, there's so many books coming out. Understandably, it might not be the one you're rushed to.
Exactly. Yeah, that is true. Well, I'm glad you're liking it. It's not something that I thought that, honestly, when it first came out, that you would be reading, you know?
Me either. I'm just friends with David, so I wanted to give it a shot with that. And also, again, I like Cable a lot. So he's a surprise hero that I like. I feel like most people are like, you like Cable? I'm like, yeah, no, for some reason I got into him like 2009-ish, and he just popped in and out, and I always like seeing him. I think he's a fun character.
Gotcha. All right. So let's talk about Out of Alcatraz, issue 1. This is another book that was released this week. And originally I did not pick it up. And then someone said, oh, you got to read it. So I was like, okay, I'll read it. And I liked it. I thought it was kind of cool about, 4 people that were supposed to escape from Alcatraz. And supposedly it was 3. And then another one died, supposedly. And then there was 2. And then you wind up getting to see these 2 guys kind of go to where they need to get to. There was people setting them up to get work and to do work for them and whatnot. And then you get the reveal at the end that maybe the guy that drowned is alive. And it's a pretty interesting book. I actually liked it. It kind of reminded me a lot of the Shawshank Redemption, in a way. So I enjoyed the book. I thought it was worth checking out the next issue if I can get my hands on it.
I liked it well enough, but it was like one of those middle of the road ones where I feel like I kind of would forget it after a while. Like it's a very forgettable issue for me. And I didn't love the characters as much, and I wanted to feel more attached to them. I thought the concept was very interesting. Like you said, like them getting out of Alcatraz, I thought was interesting. And like the story has been done before, but why hasn't it been done like this? I thought that was cool. But the characters for me were just really bland. And
they didn't have really much important personality. Yeah, I agree. It was like they were so focused on telling the story of them escaping and then the police trying to figure out, or the FBI trying to figure out if they lived or if they died, and the situation on their survival, basically, that they forgot about the character aspect in itself, right?
No, yeah, for sure. And again, the character sells me a lot, so I don't know if I get issue 2, but I also don't hate that I got issue 1. I thought the artwork was good, like you said, and glad I tried it.
Gotcha. All right, now it's that time for the number 1 comic book of the week for us. What was yours?
Mine was actually Absolute Batman because I felt like it improved so much for me. Like I was like, oh wow, this is like what I like about Absolute Batman. So,
gotcha. Mine was actually, I think I mentioned this book before, but it's Those Not Afraid issue 3 from
who publishes that again?
Dark Horse.
Dark Horse, okay.
So I think you would like this book. This
Joe's
book
Not
here
Afraid.
is about two serial killers, right? And eventually they wind up going into competition with each other on who can kill more victims, more people, right? And you find out in this book, like, what, like, certain relationships that these serial killers have and all these different things. And there's this one woman or young woman who is a podcaster that, like, follows these people on, over years and years of all the most famous serial killers, and she does podcasts with them. So she's doing this podcast of these two people, and you kind of witness the hack and slash stuff that's going on in there, and like what the victims do. They have specific names, and there's all kinds of different twists and turns. And this is a mini series. It's only 4-issue miniseries. So the next issue is the last issue. But this is a really good story, and it took an emotional turn here in this third issue by the time you wind up getting to the end of it. So I would definitely pick this up. If you can somehow get it at your shop, I would definitely read it.
Remind me when issue 4 comes out. That way, maybe I'll read the first 3, and then I'll read issue 4 and try to, because I mean, it does sound up my alley. And Carl Starks writes it. He did that Peacemaker run from a little while ago.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Awesome.
So I like his writing. So I check it out. It wasn't in my radar. I remember when you guys talked about it. Maybe I wasn't here for issue 1, but you guys talked about like issue 2, and I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds fun. And then obviously, like,
right.
It's always fun when you catch an issue 1. It's always harder to go back when it's after that.
It's funny because I did not get issue 1 on release.
Maybe that's why.
And one of my viewers recommended it. My subs recommended it to me. He said, you should read this. And so I read it digitally, and then I told my comic shop that I wanted it. I put it on my pull list for that point on. And it was after the first issue, I was like, oh, damn, this is good. I am hooked on this. So it was definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right. So the top 5 are done, but we got to do our most anticipated. And Kat, this is your number 3, and this is my number 1. We both have Batman issue 158. I know a lot of people probably already got their hands on it because there was 1 hour today where you could get that comic book.
That's so interesting.
And I obviously I couldn't make it to my shop. I was working at that time, but it was like 6:08 or 6:18 or something, or 7 to 7 something. And you could pick up like the glow in the dark cover, the party cover, and all these other different books. But yeah, Batman is out tomorrow, and this is like the most anticipated comic, I think, of the year.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's why it's on my list. It's so interesting because, like, personally, I don't like Batman Hush that much. So it's just like, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just like not my personal favorite Batman story. So I don't know if I personally have as much of an interest, but I'm really excited about the hype around it. And just like, obviously Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb returning. I just think the concept of it is so interesting. And also the idea of like, were you trying to buy time? Like, I still don't really know why this exists within the Batman flagship. Most of the time you would just make its own series so to see it in the Batman flagship, I think is also interesting.
I just think it's something to get the people excited about. Right. And I think whenever you see Jim Lee doing artwork, any fan of Jim Lee, whether you loved him in DC Comics, Marvel Comics, you're going to get excited for it, especially when you've seen him do a series. Like the last time I've seen him do a series was Superman Unchained. And remember, that was delayed because it was monthly. He's been doing this book for a long time. So all these books are in the can and they're already done, you know? So,
and for him to finish beginning, middle, and end, because I remember there was like another book too where I don't think he even finished it. Like he had like two issues and then like someone else went on. So to see him like, do something from beginning, middle, and end, I think is cool. So yeah, even if I'm not personally excited, there's an excitement around it that's like, oh yeah, I want to see what it's all about.
And I like when we have stuff like this in comics where people are just like super, super duper excited for it, because it just shows you that we can still get there if we do the right things, So, all right. And then, of course, Spider-Man comes out the month after, but there's no way it's going to get any close to that hype because
No.
you're not putting a top tier artist or even writer. And I'm not saying either are bad, but they're not next level. And I think Jen Lee is that next level right there.
And it's the same creator as your previous volume. So it makes it harder to be excited when you're like, oh, it's going to be the same thing. It's just an issue 1. It's going to be the same story.
Right. Exactly. All right. And then your number 2 and my number 2 are the same. Ultimate Spider-Man issue 15. So this is the first appearance of, you would say, Ultimate Sandman in this issue. And what are the ramifications, if they touch on it, of what happened with Harry? That's what I'm curious. Or are they going to take a break? Now, the thing about this one is Chiquetto is not doing the artwork in this issue.
So probably they are going to take a little bit of a break until they get the main artist. But it's like a comfort read too, because no matter what, it's going to be entertaining. And obviously it's Spider-Man and they're doing stuff that's different. I've very rarely not been entertained by this series, even if it's not my number 1 book. It's no, I enjoyed reading it. I want to continue to see where it goes. So just as a Spider-Man fan, it's almost everything you want, I'll say there's characters I wish we'd have more time with. I want to see more Mary Jane. I want to see more of the kids, which now we are seeing more of the kids. There's so many characters you want to see in so little time. Honestly, I wish it was on Amazing Spider-Man's release schedule. Because I would love to have this twice every month, but you gotta wait once a month to read it. So it's they could only do as much as they can as they're introducing new elements too.
Yeah, and thank God we have this book because I don't know if all we had was the Amazing Spider-Man book that we have. I mean, oh God, it's so frustrating.
I think it's interesting because I just finished Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. It's you can have so many other interesting things that are coming out for something like that. I thought that was a really solid series, and just the main series be so lackluster when you have a really good anime show right now and then a really good Elseworld book. Make your main series just as good.
Yeah. I don't know how hard that is. I don't know. I don't know. All right. And then your number 1 is Superman issue 24. And actually, I didn't do my number 3. My number 3 is Feral. I mean, it is such a stacked week that Feral is not even if you look on League of Comic Geeks, it's pretty down there on the low end. And it is a top tier comic book in my eyes.
Me too. It is such one of my favorites, and I was telling this to Mike. So I was talking to Tony Fleeks at Emerald City Comic Con. We were just talking, and he's like, "Next issue, I have your name on it. You have a pull quote." I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And I got to look at we get advanced reviews for a lot of the indie books. I was like, oh, it's cool to see that. And it's interesting to see that that's not one of my most anticipated, even though my name's on it. But it's because Feral's one of my favorite comics. It's just you so happen to have Ultimate Spider-Man and Superman coming out the same week. Like you said, it's a very stacked week.
How did he put your name on? Did he just get the quote from?
Yeah, he just got a quote. I think it might have been my Substack. I think he got the quote from my Substack. It was from one of my top 10. Either it was my top 10 video because it's the quote says top 10 comics of 2024. And it's one of my quotes. So I was like, oh, that's cool. And it was cool that I saw him that week and he told me about it. I was like, oh, I'm excited to read it because of Feral. But I was telling Phil, I told him you got to read Feral because I'm not a cat. I don't like cats very much. There's very few cats in my life that I like. I've never been a cat fan, but this book is so good. And he's such my friend and my business partner is such a big cat fan. He lived with so many cats. So I'm like, how are you not reading this book? You should read this. You're a big fan of horror and cats. This will be one of your favorite books ever. So I had him pick up the first volume, and that's when I started talking to him. And he's like, yeah, no, you have a quote. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. So look out for Feral tomorrow. My name's on it. But that's a great example of so many books coming out tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. It's you're going to find out what happened with the crazy cat lady. Did she survive the wreck? Did she die? I mean, she went through so much already. But the cool thing about this issue, in case you guys didn't know, is that our cats are going to go from the crazy cat lady to, I think they said, the pet supermarket.
Oh, that's fun. I like
So
that.
they're going to be in a grocery store or supermarket or something like that. That is going to be awesome. This just reminds me now again of Walking Dead. You go from place to place, deal with different situations on hand. So
if you like horror, it is one of the best horror books I've ever read. It's just like it just knows the genre really well. So yeah, go check it out if you haven't read it.
And then so like I said, now you have Superman issue 24 as your number one.
Again, it's just another one of those that is so freaking consistent. And I love the book because every issue feels like something's happening. And that's sometimes, believe it or not, hard to come by with superhero books. It's like a lot of times be like, fight, nothing really happened. And you're like, okay, now I got to wait until the next issue. This is a book that does so well with, you have the fights, you have the story arcs, you have the shocking moments. And it's just, for me, a perfect superhero book. I did a review about this I think a couple of weeks ago, where it's like, what's the best superheroes on Stan? And it was between Ultimate Spider-Man and Superman. And I said Superman in the regard that Superman is in the regular universe. Like Ultimate Spider-Man, I think is the best book in the regard of an alternate universe. But Ultimate Spider-Man can do anything it wants. Like it already kind of it doesn't have any shackles. For Superman to do what it's doing with the shackles of it being in the regular universe, I think means it's the best superhero book on stands because
that makes you definitely make a good point, because you want your main titles in the main universe to capture those readers. You don't want readers to rely on alternate universe books. As good as these alternate universe books are, you want people to still be in touch with the main characters in the main universe, because it shows that you can still write good stories with those characters. And that's what Spider-Man is suffering from right now. Like, we love Ultimate Spider-Man, but you should be able to write a main Amazing Spider-Man book, right? And so we're relying on other versions of these characters. So it leads to believe that we can't write new stories for these characters.
And in going to Superman, I think there's a power in Superman is some people's favorite hero ever. Like we've seen the big Superman fans, but for me and you, like I like Superman. We like Superman, but he's not our Spider-Man. So to like a book this much when he's not one of my favorite superheroes, I think also shows how well written of a book it is. Absolutely. It's easy for us to like a Spider-Man. We already like Spider-Man. We love Spider-Man. So when you have a decent, good story of Spider-Man, we're globbed onto it. But when you have like this good of a story for a character that honestly, I don't have to read Superman every month. It's not a character I tend to have to do that with, but to have it at this level, I think it just shows how good this book is.
Right. Like Action Comics, like for some, I don't even touch it. Like I don't even buy it. Right. And then for years, Superman, I didn't buy. Peter J. Tomasi's run, I bought. And then once Brian Michael Bendis took it over, hated it.
Yeah, we dropped it. Yeah.
Dropped it big time. I mean, not even close. And then I didn't buy it for the longest time. And then it changed over again. And so this has been the best runs for me since Peter J. Tomasi has written it.
I think this might be my favorite Superman run ever. Like I remember liking some Elseworld Supermans that were like shorter, but like a run, this might be my favorite.
Right. We had the one where I don't know if that was Action Comics, where you went into another world and did like fighting and shit.
Yeah, I don't even think I continued that one. I think I read that for a few issues and then dropped it.
I don't know if that was in Action or Superman. I don't even remember it.
It might have been. I feel like that was Bendis times. I want to say it was like in both of them.
No, it wasn't Bendis. It was oh shit. I don't know if it was like Philip Kennedy Johnson or somebody like that.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, he did Action. I don't think he did. Maybe he did Superman too. I don't remember. But I didn't really read Superman at that time either. I think I dropped it.
Yeah.
It really shows, like I said, like I don't tend to pick up Superman very much. So it shows if I'm loving Superman, how big of a difference that is.
I was right. It was Philip Kennedy Johnson.
And it was Action.
Yep. So but that's it. I think we're done. We wrapped it up. Just under 2 hours. So thank you all for watching this show. I mean, we've had like 70 plus viewers throughout. You guys are great. Thank you for all your comments and for everything. And hopefully all three of us will be on next week, because we want to talk about some of these huge comic books that are coming out tomorrow. And it will be great to get all three of us, our opinions, and then, of course, your guys' opinions as well. So remember, on the way out, give this video a thumbs up. Of course, subscribe to Kat Comic Uno's channel as she does her weekly review on her channel as well. Give it a watch. And then, of course, if you haven't subscribed to me, subscribe to Comic Book Corner 2.0 as well. Don't forget Brant as well. Only Good Comics. Subscribe to his channel. He does a great series called Friday Firsts every Friday. And, hit the notification bells and all that other great stuff. So as always, guys, have a great new comic book day. Hopefully you're able to get your copies of Batman. The stores are not sold out. And we'll see you all next week. Take care, guys. Good night.